Yeah, good day, sir.
Very good.
I'm introducing Mr. Chairman myself. Here. Basically, I am here to solicit from you any reply or any as relates to March 10th visit to Port Morant, and you said you had conversation there.
Yes.
The thing is that we're looking at a couple of points.
Sure.
And if you need to respond in writing or whatever means,
Sure.
we're just going to tell you what to do.
Sure,
So
what the points are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we have sent Sunday the 10th of March
Yeah.
at Port Morant to the 19th. So while we were addressing persons there in the news words, they said you claim that after the 21st of March, the government will be illegal. All right? And that if the president, Mr. Granger, Mr. Nagamutu, if they come,
Yes.
can chase them.
Yeah, chase them out.
They're illegal.
Yeah,
That's
yes.
and that's one. And two, you call the president and Mr. Nagamutu and one Stanley Cat, jackasses.
Yes.
And so, actually, it's fair enough to, if you want to explain. These are two
Sure.
thing I'm about. I actually coming about. Okay. And then you can reply. You could in writing or whatever means it is.
Yes, I'm tempted to give you an explanation because I do believe that there is strong justification for everything that I said.
Yeah.
But I will prefer to just give you a written statement.
Thanks.
Okay?
What you guys have just witnessed there is events that took place earlier today at the Leader of the Opposition office, where he were visited by members of the Guyana Police Force, where he was asked to respond to specific complaints, two in particular, one of which he was asked to respond to a complaint of chase them out, and allegedly calling members of the coalition government jackasses earlier this year at Babu Jan on the quarantine coast of Berbice. However, as you may know, if one were to look at the video recording from those events, you would see that he mentioned Judases and not jackasses that they're claiming. Notably, earlier in March 17, 2015, I believe, the then leader of the opposition, now President of Guyana, President Granger, labeled the former PPC administration as jackasses at a GMSA dinner. That was when, just before the May 2015 general and regional elections. No investigations was conducted then by the Guyana Police Force. However, as you just saw, members of the Guyana Police Force are now looking into such statements that were made by the leader of the opposition. Yes, so welcome to our regularly scheduled program of This Week in 60 Minutes. I'm your host, Roodi Balgobin, and with us we have Juan Edghill Jr. as well. So,
Okay.
Juan.
You know, two popular sayings that we have developed over time. One of which is, a promise is a comfort to a fool. And the other saying is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. In 2015, we would have received a whole host of promises from this administration, many of which were promised to all sectors, all peoples of society. It ranged from the government promising to lower taxes, to provide jobs for our young people. They promised 9,000 bags for rice. They promised not to close the sugar industry. So we would have received a lot of promises from this administration in 2015. But what has been the cry now in 2019? Increased hardships. This has been the complaint from Guyanese across our country for the past 4 years. One of the many groups affected has been our farmers and our sugar workers, and they have been excessively affected by this administration and their policies. I think what's important to note is that in many instances, the effect or the affection that would have been received by members and sugar workers would have been because of priority spending. I think that this government has failed to prioritize its spending to what and the people that matters most, which is the Guyanese people. I mean, we're spending a lot of money, a lot of millions and billions of dollars chasing after dietary products and buying vehicles and so on, but our people are not being taken care of. And the promises that were made in 2015, and some people might say that a promise is just a promise, but when you're vying to become a government of a country, it becomes a contract with those people. You're basically forming a contract, because once you make a promise, that's an offer, and in contracts we know once there's offer and acceptance, it becomes binding. So this government would have accepted that offer that was made, amen, to the Guyanese people. So we have to, in retrospect, we have to ensure that we look after our people. So back to you, Steve.
Yeah, sure. One thing that is clear from all of this that's happening is that the future of Guyanese youths are at risk here. And we have a story of one young girl, which many of you would have seen already, where we lost employment. Her father lost employment in the sugar industry at Wales, and she's been suffering. She cannot go to school and stuff like that. Just to keep you guys updated, our topic for tonight is understanding the impact of APNU-AFC coalition government decisions. So that's why we're focusing here right now on the decision to abandon the rice farmers, as Juan would have mentioned earlier, and to the political decision, basically, to close the Wales sugar estate and many other sugar estates, Rose Hall and
Yes, so some of the increased hardships that would have been leveled against the Guyanese people, let's look at the duty tax on miners and the equipment that they have to bring in. That was imposed on our miners. They have to bring in equipment. So now we have to see our miners, they have the extra burden now of having to pay extra monies in order to bring in the equipment. We have a loss of jobs, close to 30,000 jobs we would have lost since 2015. And these are the hardships that we would have faced since 2015. We have an increase in taxes. We saw that there was an increase in over 200 tax measures, and the GRA would have boasted about collecting increased revenues, but we see that this has just been the result of an increase in taxation. And how are our mothers, who are single parents, supposed to afford certain amenities when this government was saying before 2015 that the PPP was actually not doing the best or its best for our people? But we see now in 2019, this government is actually doing worse, because they've increased the burden on our parents and our single parents and so on. So they took away the 10,000 cash grant, and all the rest of it they took away from our people. So now they're going to say that they're the better administration, but we have just seen an increase on hardships. One of the things that I would have noticed is that they would have actually put on a tax on the internet. And when that happened, I thought, how can you tax the internet? With young people, you're basically wiping away the full support that you had, because the internet forms a large part of what young people are engaged in today's society. I know a lot of older people might criticize us for being on the internet too much, but it forms part of our freedom of expression in this country. So this government put tax on the internet, and we have to end up paying the people who use it the most, which are young people.
While you're on that subject one of young people and the school grants and so, I'd just like to take the time out to wish those students that are going to be sitting the National Grade 6 assessment tomorrow. Best of luck, and hope you guys do well in that. Also, since you won't see us until next week again, we have a very long weekend coming up. It's Good Friday on Friday, along with the Easter weekend. We'd like to wish you guys a happy Easter holiday, and be safe out there. Remember to don't fly your kites around electrical wires and stuff like that.
Thank you.
And just to build from what Juan is saying there, the sugar workers, we had the government carry the bring government to you campaign
Yes.
all the way to Region 6. Now we know that Region 6 has been a region that's been devastated since this government took office.
Yes.
They made a decision to close the sugar estate. One that was political. It wasn't
Yes.
grounded in any economics.
Yeah.
No social and environmental studies were done, how it will affect the lives of people. And they invited the People's Progressive Party to negotiations, but
Yes.
we later found out that they went ahead and gave directions to Mr. Corton in the
Yes.
United States
Yes.
to seek markets to sell these estates already. So that's just one of the instances where you can see that the decisions of the coalition government and how they are hindering us and how insincere they are with what they're doing.
Yes, indeed. Just to get back to the hardships, I was actually driving along Main Street, and I was in front of the King's Plaza Hotel, and I came out and I saw the place closed up. There was no activity whatsoever around there. So I asked my brother. I said, "What's going on here? Are they just not open today?" But he said to me that they shut down. But I had no idea that another business would have been closed down. But we also have seen over time that a number of businesses have shut down since 2015. And if you look at the commentary that they have been making, it's just been because of the taxes. It has been because of the business environment. It's not being stymied. It's not being encouraged by this government. So basically what people are doing, they're packing up and they're going to greener pastures.
Yes.
So part of it is not just our workers and our farmers, but the people, the resources, the private sector, which really should be helping to provide jobs for our people. They themselves have not been encouraged by this government to continue to work in this country.
Yeah, well, as you can see, shutting down stuff and closing up and spending the money unwisely is a trend of this government. So what we'll do now is we'll take a look at videos from the sugar workers who were there at the bringing government to you. They were there picketing, and they had some specific messages for the coalition government. So let's take a look.
Juan, I worked at Fiscal as a field foreman for 25 years, and until I was kicked out by Gaisuku. And up to now, 1 year, 3 months, and for some days, I can't get a job yet. I can't earn $1. Instead of putting money in the bank, I taking it out. I have a sickly wife who is 4 blockages in her heart, diabetic, and I can't get money from nowhere. This government needs everybody to open back this industry, the sugar industry.
My name is Hemoti Prasad. I work at Skellen Estate for 32 years. And now I haven't any job. I have four fatherless children to mine. There's no job for me nowhere. Look all about one job. If you go in the market, you're not even get a job. You plant your greens and all in and sell. Everybody has to for themselves. So I need a job.
My name is Ramdev Suklal, and I work in Skellen Estate for 38 years. And now I am out of a job. I have my wife and picking for mine. I have no job. I have mortgage to pay. I have no money. The money I have in the bank, I have to take it out to pay maybe like bills, the water bills, and other bills.
My name is Patrick Mendes. I work at Skellen guys for 21 years. And right now I'm out of the job. Right now we having nothing, no alternative. We get 6 children going to school. How are they going to eat? What are they going to do? It depends on us and on me alone. My wife is not working nowhere. Nothing. We getting a payday right now. We asking whosoever, the minister or whosoever is here, please find a job for us and let me get our life going in a mannerly way and in a quiet way back like how we went in 20 years back. Thank you.
My name is Sham Jabbar. I work in Skellen Estate for 32 years. Now the estate closed on. I am out of job. I looking for a job everywhere and anywhere, and I don't have a job. This government should find job for the Skellen people. Open back the industry. What they want, we going to block out a thief? Huh? Where are we going to get job? We're looking for a job to earn $1. We don't have a job anywhere. The bandits are enough around, kicking down doors, hustle the poor peoples. What do you want me to do? Block door like the bandits and get jail? No, we don't want that. We need a job back, open back the industry. People must earn $1.
My name is Edghill. I'm a redundant worker from Skellen Estate. and now I have moved on into pension line. So my purpose of being here today is to say something on behalf of the young people whom I usually talk with actually every day. Workers, young workers who had just got married, they got a kid, they got 2 children, they got a wife, they are making it a hard time because one, there is no job, there is no money. They can't pay for the water that they use, the electricity, even their telephone is being taken away now. So things are really tight and scalded, particularly upon the young people who have now begun life. And I would appreciate if this government would really seriously, meaningfully look into the life of young people and stop being selective in these jobs.
Thanks for staying with us. Tonight to discuss the hardships imposed on Guyanese by the APNU plus AFC administration is PPPC parliamentarian Mr. Colin Crow. Thanks for being with us tonight, Colin.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yes. With the many broken promises, the government continues to fail to respond to the needs of the average Guyanese. What are your thoughts on this, Colin?
Oh, well, in the lead up to the 2015 elections, let's start from there.
Yes.
There were so many promises, and it's a fact that many of their promises have been broken. And even in their 100-day, their grandeur, their 100-day plan that they made, there were so many commitments, and all of which it's reversed, whereby at the bottom line is that they brought increased hardship on our people right across this country.
Yes.
It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter which sector you're in, they've brought increased hardship. But the fundamental base, if we can start from the foundation, for any country, for any people, what you want is a respect for rule and law and order, and respect for the Constitution. And once you have that breach at that level, it has a domino effect. And we've been seeing everything from this government we have did. They've been not following the Constitution. They've been trying to breach it as far as practical, and in fact many times ignore the basic laws that are in place. And so maybe I'll allow you to ask a question and I can expand.
But what would you say is the main concern of the people in the productive sector? Not only the rice and sugar sectors, but wider field. What is the main concern of people in the productive sector in Guyana, what would you say?
Yeah, but for me, the main productive sector, we will still have to focus on agriculture.
Yes.
Agriculture continues to play a major role. But if you examine that sector, within the last 4 years, that the agriculture sector has seen a decrease in allocation by over $5 billion.
Yes.
And the agriculture sector in our budget takes up only about 16%.
Okay.
But if you look at the other measures, what have they done? They have brought increased hardship on many of our farmers and having direct impact on many families. You can start with the case in Region 5, Region 6, the increase in the land rental fees. If I take you even to the hinterland, they too have been affected because they've raised by over 100%, in many cases 200%, the agriculture lease fees. And so while there's always this buzz about the upcoming boom on oil and gas sector, that will not be the answer to our economy, because that sector, of course, only benefits a few. And agriculture, we need the agriculture to be the main driver and the pillar of our economy, because that's what's going to have the spin-off effect on so many families right across our country. And it's a shame that you have that huge importation bill in agriculture.
Yeah.
And so we were known at one time as the food basket of the Caribbean.
Yes,
And so for me, that should be our focus.
Well, Colin, you're speaking about cost of living. So what do you think is needed by the coalition government? What do you think they need to do? What action should they take in order to alleviate the increased cost of living, as you've been speaking about?
Well, there are many measures, let's start with some of the things that they've implemented.
Yeah.
The taxation measures, I think you were just mentioning about the taxation measures. So you're talking about over 200 different category of items for which VAT is being applied, or for which previously was zero rated. You can start at the basic level of education. You can speak to our pensioners. We had waiver for our pensioners in terms of water and electricity.
Yes, subsidies, yes.
You can speak towards ICT. Even the ICT, the mobile data, it's VATted. You can speak towards traveling right across our country in the hinterland. The air travel, or even for postage, it benefited from 0 rate. That is now taxed.
That's true.
So there are so many things that can be done, but there are some other things that we need to also focus on. That is the government themselves, whereby they need to take some measures. One, they first of all increase the amount of ministries and the ministers. So obviously that had a huge overhead cost on our state.
Yes, it did.
Then they also have whereby huge spending in various line items. You talk about local travel. You speak about the dietary. You talk about meals and refreshments.
Yes.
And so those line items, those are huge billions and billions of dollars that can be cut and spent towards our people across the country.
People, rather than other things, our people. Yeah.
And let's go even to the public servants. You introduce measures to increase the age for which cars can be imported into the country.
Yes, yeah.
Then you ban used tires. And so these are all because you can have the necessary check and balances and the necessary agency to ensure that the tires are of good quality, but they ban all the used tires. And so right away it's a cost of giving our young people and the opportunity for them to own their own vehicle and to move around.
So Colin, how does government's failure affect the confidence of the Guyanese people in their ability to provide these services to them? How does it affect the Guyanese people? Should Guyanese still trust this administration? What do you think the response should be at this point in time, given all of this that is happening?
Sure, absolutely no trust. You're starting from a government which talk about lean and clean government, and now we have time doesn't permit me to go into all the examples, but you have now in the news ventilating the huge corruption. Even at the governmental level, they talk about the high, huge payment to ministers. Right away, they pay themselves 50 to 100% salary increases. And so immediately upon their first few months in office, the trust was not there. You have the whole aspect, and I must bring it in because I see the correlation, the appointment of the GCOM chairman. Because there again, because there's a procedure, there's a set out procedure in our constitution, the president went arbitrarily and made that appointment. And so there's little or no thrust across this country in terms of our people. People are now, as a result, to answer your question, people are now fearful. We see what happened today, intimidation. And of course, we in the People's Progressive Party, Civic, we don't feel intimidated by some of those tactics that the government is trying. We will stand by our people to support our people. And so people are losing hope. As a result of the actions of the government. People are suffering. You just spoke about the amount of employment, 30,000, over 30,000 unemployment, so I don't want to repeat it. But what happens? Desperate measures, social effects as a result, because there are much more, you have persons, taking part in ill activities and so forth.
Okay, very quickly, Colin, I know you're the regional MP in the Parliament for Region 1. Can you give us an update as to what's happening in Region 1 before we go to our next segment?
Thank you. Yes. Region number 1, politically we have been doing a lot of work continuously with our team there, and I must thank our team for the hard work they're putting in. But in region number 1, let's talk about the actions by the government. The first action that they did, and it's for all the hinterland, is the campaign on youths and job opportunities for our youths, etc. We know what happened at the parliament, at the cabinet level, but even in the hinterland, with the removal of all those community support officers and replacing it with a temporary program, a case program, which only lasts for 6 months, and there are only 5 beneficiaries in the long run, and as a versus over 1,972 CSOs being removed. But I just spoke about the example of air travel and the postage being VATted. Right away, persons are affected because less persons are traveling. So in the communities, the village economies, it's absent in the region, like in all the other hinterland communities, and that's most where they're suffering from Because if you go to the established areas, and I always use this example because as a measure of how well the citizens are doing and the villagers are doing, and you go on the popular market days, you can measure and see the activity that is taking place. And now on the popular market days, you don't see that kind of circulation of money. You don't see that kind of wealth generation. And of course, you just spoke about mining. Mining too, that's heavily affected. The Matakai sub-region, which depends a lot on the mining activities, that's affected. And so even on agriculture too. We see that this government has little or progressive program for development of agriculture within the hinterland. And you know, for region number 1, they produce a lot of agricultural products.
Yes, we do.
And even for the ferry, they are now affected too by the ferry service that should have been in place by now had there been a PBPC government continuing.
That was one of our projects.
Many of our persons are affected. The ferry service that they have, the temporary boat that they have running there, it's running in an ad hoc manner. Only a few persons are getting their products produced onto the boat or their items onto the boat to take to the region. A few businessmen are dominating it. So at the end of the day, it's a small man that is suffering. So right across this country, whether you're in the hinterland, whether you're in the coastland, our people are suffering as a result of this government and increased hardship.
Okay, Colin, we
Thanks,
thank
Colin.
you for being a part of the program. What we can take from it, I think that all Guyanese can agree that the government has failed to respond to the needs of the Guyanese people and continues to fail the nation. Now we'll take a short break and return with our discussion for tonight's program.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
APNU AFC promised more jobs and a good life. Instead, we lost 30,000 jobs. Taxes went up, people are less safe, and cost of living skyrocketed. Now, after 4 years of neglect and corruption, the APNU AFC gang are coming with more empty promises, only cause they need you now. We are smart. Fool me once, shame on you. This time, we will not be fooled by your sneaky fake news APNU promises. We vote in PPPC to get Guyana working again. APNU AFC promised more jobs and a good life. Instead, we lost 30,000 jobs. Taxes went up, people are less safe, and cost of living skyrocketed. Now, after 4 years of neglect and corruption, the APNU AFC gang are coming with more empty promises, only cause they need you now. We are smart. Fool me once, shame on you. This time, we will not be fooled by your sneaky fake news APNU promises. We vote in PPPC to get Guyana working again.
Welcome back to This Week in 60 Minutes. In studio, we have here with us tonight Ms. Marcia Nadir Sharma. We're happy to have you here tonight.
Yes, thanks for coming.
Ms. Sharma, we know you're one of the lawyers that are working on the case that was recently filed against the Guyana Elections Commission and the Chief Elections Officer. Now, can you give us an update as to what exactly is going on there and why the need to file that case at this particular time?
Sure, Rudy. Good night, viewers, and thank you for having me on the program, gentlemen.
Sure.
For the benefit of our viewing public, what has happened is a constitutional case has been filed on behalf of Bibi Zinatoon, who is a retired teacher that lives both in Guyana and in England in the course of a year.
Okay.
She spends 5 months outside of Guyana, and then she returns to Guyana for 7 months. Now, what is happening is that Ms. Zinatoon is essentially a person who will be directly affected by the proposed GCOM's house-to-house registration exercise, which is slated to begin, at least as reported in the press, in June of 2019. So what is happening is that that case has been filed as a way to stop the house-to-house registration, because what will happen is if Ms. Zinatoon, based on what has been reported in the press by 3 APNU commissioners as well as the Minister of State, if Ms. Zinatoon, who is scheduled to be out of Guyana from the end of May, is not physically present at her local place of residence in Guyana during the proposed house-to-house registration period, then essentially her name will be taken off of the National Register of Registrants. Now, for those persons who may not know, the National Register of Registrants is essentially the database by which every qualified elector is added to the list. Now, in 2005, there was an amendment to the law which essentially introduced the concept of continuous registration.
Yes.
And what had happened was that a cutoff date of 2001 was set as the baseline for adding persons to the list. So since 2005, essentially, you've had a continuous process. Now, persons can be added to this National Register of Registrants in one of two ways, either by an actual application or by a house-to-house registration exercise. And let me stress, the purpose is to add a person to the existing list, hence the concept continuous. The proposed action by GCOM is essentially to retire this National Register of Registrants. Retire it, it doesn't exist, and we must start from scratch. And by doing that, it's essentially, you're essentially taking away from a person, or as a phrase that we have coined, you are going to deregister somebody who currently exists on that national list. Now, why this is important, this National Register of Registrants is the overall database from which the official list of electors is extracted for an election.
Okay.
So if, for example, Ms. Zinatun, who has voted as recent as 2018 in the local government elections, she is a registered, qualified elector that exists on this national register, had her name extracted from this register, put onto the official list of electors, and now is exposed to the potential risk of being deregistered because she will have the unfortunate experience of not being physically here in Guyana when this house-to-house registration commences.
Now, quickly, there's been many debate in the public forum as to what the Constitution says on this matter. Now, is there a requirement within the Constitution to be resident within Guyana to be registered on our list if you're a
Guyanese? Should ask by extension by law.
There is in the Constitution a provision that says essentially to be a qualified elector, you must be a resident and you must be of a certain age in accordance with the law. But here is here's an appreciation of the concept. Resident here is not defined as, oh, you must be in the country for a period of time, or once I'm a born Guyanese, I have established a right or a residence in Guyana. I am a resident of Guyana, right? And so to suggest that there's some hidden requirement when in law there is none, exposes persons like Ms. Zinatun to being deregistered.
Yeah, well, a lot of youths would be studying the impact of not having house-to-house registration, because we saw that the administration pushing the agenda that house-to-house registration needs to happen because young people are going to be disenfranchised and all the rest of it. So how are youths supposed to look at this occurring right now? What is the impact on young people that want to vote at the next elections? What would you say?
Well, young people need to understand that, again, your right to be on this national register is not determined only by house-to-house registration. Now, there is a unspoken rule or policy that, every time a birth occurs in Guyana, the registration office will obviously have a list of persons who were born, a list of persons who die in a period of time. And so for the purposes of continuous registration, again the word continuous registration, that a list is compiled and submitted to GCOM, and GCOM is supposed to be able to add persons, because being able to say, okay, well, Marcia was born at this point in time, in 1 year she will be 14, or in 2 years, maybe, you can actually reach out to her and say, you are going to be.
Right.
But that's an administrative process. Alternatively, knowing that I am a citizen and an election is coming up and I may be interested in voting in this election, and I know I'm not on the list and I don't have an ID card, then I can actually go into GCOM or the division area, the office registration area, and say, I would like to be on the list, and it's called an application. So it is not that if you miss house-to-house registration, you can't go on the list. That's a fallacy.
Yes.
You literally can go in on your own accord, your own volition, and say, I want to be on the list, and demand that your name be on the list.
Excellent. I think that's an important point that we have to highlight surrounding this entire issue, because of the information that's being peddled out there is actually to the contrary. But we have a number of young people who are studying abroad, who may not necessarily be a part of many of these processes. How does someone who's studying abroad still get the right to vote when they come back home? Because they might be studying at a foreign university or working overseas, but they're coming back here. So how does that affect them, youths that are abroad?
Well, the house-to-house registration in its current plan will affect them. Means that they will not be allowed to vote. So
exactly.
you may have classes during this house-to-house period, and so you won't be here to physically identify yourself.
Okay,
and so therefore you will not be on the list.
They're gonna mark you out.
Exactly. And so to those persons, I would say that, look, you need to be aware, again, that you can apply to be added to the existing list. And if you have somebody who can literally go in and find out for you. But what is important about this case, and why this case is necessary, is our need to stop the deregistration of persons who are already on the list. Because we have yet to see any proof or any credible evidence to suggest that the current list is bloated, that there are so many persons on it either dead or shouldn't be on the list, or that they've migrated. Those are not criteria for taking somebody off the list. Now, the law is very specific. Yes. You can only remove a person on the Regulation 38 of the National Registration Act, and you can only do that during a claims and objections period. GCOM does not have the mandate to say, well, if I don't physically see you, and your name is on the existing list, and because I didn't see you, your name coming off. They don't have the power to do that.
But on the point of having a bloated list, this was the same list that we used for the local government elections in November 2018.
Exactly.
So the argument now or the need for house registration is really
convenient.
Convenient. we could use that word.
What would you say are some of the risks? We know we'd have any elections coming up soon, if not this year, early next year. What do you say are some of the risks of deregistration for those who would be disenfranchised if this was to go ahead?
Well, if we are not successful in essentially stopping the process or halting the process, and we were to win at the Caribbean Court of Justice in relation to the no confidence motion, then what you will have is a potential situation or scenario where GCOM will say, well, here, the court might have said the no confidence motion is valid, but I've started a house-to-house registration process, and so your elections, while the court may tell me I have to hold elections, I have to finish my registration process because I don't have a list. That is going to be illegal. It's a wrong position because you have a list, you have an existing list. Now, let me remind persons that when we say that the list ends April 30th, we are not speaking of the National Register of Registrants.
Yes.
We are speaking about the official list of electors, which is an extract from the register, the National Register. House-to-house registration adds persons to the National Register. And so we need to understand the distinction between these two lists. Now, just to remind everyone that there are two cases coming up at the Caribbean Court of Justice. One on the 8th of May is in relation to the appointment, the unilateral appointment of the Commission of GCOM. And then on the 10th, we have the no confidence motion, the appeal against the Court of Appeals decision with regards to the no confidence motion. Now, I mean, once those two hearings are completed, it's really a question of timeline, which I suspect, well, which we've already applied to the court, saying that, look, time is of the essence and an urgent decision is required, because let's face it, the democracy of our entire country rests on the decision of the court.
Yes.
Now, to get back to the issue of risks, without a suspension order or a halt or an injunction preventing GCOM from going ahead, it essentially creates a delay tactic and will essentially disenfranchise every one of us from the opportunity to vote in a constitutionally mandated period. And we know that period is gone, but now, you know, the CCJ can actually say, well, look, we would like to reinstate this. And so that is essentially the risk.
So you mentioned the two cases that are coming up in May next month at the CCJ.
Yeah.
So I know the CCJ have issued some strict timelines in terms of meeting submissions, replies to submissions, cross appeals and stuff like that. Can you give us a brief update on how this is going along? Is everyone complying with these instructions, and what is taking place there?
Well, today would have been the date for the filing of submissions. Well, I haven't checked on everybody else's
checked on
ours, right?
Okay.
But next week on the 24th, we have a second case management hearing, which will be done via teleconference, as was done on the last occasion. And what will happen at this session is basically the rules and parameters of what will happen on the 8th of May and the 10th of May will occur. So, you know, the judges will say, well, okay, this side has 30 minutes or 40 minutes. So essentially timelines and the administrative details will occur this next week, early next week, and then we go straight into the actual hearing the following week.
Okay, well, we started the program by showing a clip where some officers from the Ghana Police Force visited Dr. Jack there. They were soliciting explanations. I know you're one of the lawyers that were present and representing him. What are your views on such an exercise? As I mentioned earlier on the program, in March of 2015, Granger made these same comments, not saying that Dr. Jack made the comment. Excuse me, President Granger made the same comments when he said that the then PPC administration are, you know, jackasses and stuff like that. So what are your views on the entire scenario?
In my 20 years as an attorney, I will say I've never actually witnessed something as frivolous as the police coming to investigate essentially somebody name calling or criticizing, purportedly name calling and criticizing a public officer. Now let me say that any person who puts themselves out to be a politician in any country opens themselves to ridicule, to criticism, and so, you know, the whole charade really is just another distraction in my mind from the fact that there are so many crimes that have happened in the last week alone. In fact, today I was reading in the papers that someone had done a chronology of robberies that actually occurred in the last week. And outside of the major headline, you have not seen any kind of follow-up, any kind of statement from the police force that says, okay, you know, we've seen an upsurgence in armed robbery or murders. But what we have is the leader of the opposition being questioned about statements he made at a political forum, in a political environment, in a period where we had a viable and legal no confidence motion being passed, and essentially in a campaign mode. And you know, somebody's feelings got hurt, and so they made a complaint to the police, and the police, instead of focusing on serious crimes and serious issues, had to come to investigate this. And mind you, the name calling, there again, name calling is not a crime. There's no crime as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, but I've seen that the party has decided to also file complaints of their own because, as far as we are aware, there have been more serious name calling that has occurred in the past. So I think that with this, they have now set the mantle for this to become, I don't know, business
As usual.
business
I
of the day
hope
for,
that
for complaints.
I really hope that it does not become business as usual, because it does not inspire for somebody like me who has to practice in the courts,
Right.
and really for
Yeah.
the public at large.
That's right.
To think that their safety, their sense of security in their own homes is constantly threatened, constantly undermined, and what is of importance to the security forces is name calling. I really shudder to think that that is actually the rule of the day, or the law of the day, or that's where it's headed. And those are just my personal views. I mean,
Well, interestingly, we have seen that the Public Procurement Commission did a report on the Minister of Public Infrastructure, where he took money from Demerara Harbour Bridge and back and forth. That was sent to the Guyana Police Force, and to date we have heard nothing on that investigation, but you have these police officers showing up there for some complaint that someone called me a name and I feel hurt and stuff like that. Also, you've seen that the Guyana Police Force have, over the past, I think, 3 or 4 months, have not released any crime stats. There are no crime stats to show whether we have increases in serious crimes or decrease in serious crimes or anything of the sort, or armed robberies. But we all know we're living here, we live in reality, and we know that these things are happening. So we'd like to thank you for coming on the show. We hope you see you sometime again. Our operator just signaled to us that we are at the end of our time. And so we'd like to say thank you for everyone. Remember, again, have a safe weekend. It's a long weekend. Happy holidays. And thank you for tuning to This Week in 60 Minutes. We'll see you guys next time.
See you next week.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now 60 minutes.